And now, here's your host of Shaping Success, Wes Tankersley.
What is up, everyone? Welcome to Shaping Success. This is morning coffee, but with a kick. So, right next to me here, I got. Let's see, like we do the camera thing. We've been talking about this. You got to point the other way now.
There we go.
Yep. This is Robert Watson. He is a friend of mine that has been on the podcast before. We've got people. I don't know, Robert, if you can see the chat box, but we do have people on the side in a chat box. You might have a window that shows you it, and we'll read off questions as we go through here. But that's Nikki from TikTok, Nikki from YouTube, Nikki from all over. But we have decided that on Wednesdays we are going to break down a book, and a pretty interesting book written by, you.
Exactly. Thank you, Vic and Nikki. I can see you in the screen.
Awesome. So tell us a little bit. You know, you and I have talked about this on the podcast. We actually have an episode coming out in about 2 weeks. It'll talk a little bit more about it. But why did you decide to write this book? It's called Ars Victorious: What Makes Life Better.
It's really kind of a gift to my kids, a little bit of a legacy to my kids and my grandkids. The idea is that, how do you make life better? What keeps you in a constant state of improvement? What can you learn from the lessons in life? Or does life happen for you or to you? These are the things that people are always puzzling through, as they can sometimes look at themselves being somewhat a victim of life, as opposed to being a person who's constantly getting a lesson. In other words, every obstacle is an opportunity to grow, assuming that the obstacle doesn't take you out of the game completely.
Yeah, and for those of you who have followed you on TikTok for a long time, this is kind of the basis of the videos that you put out, right? Like, it's like,
yes.
The reality is that we have two ways of looking at the process. We can look at it as, something bad that happened, or something that will be useful in helping us get to the next step, right?
Yeah, what I did was I took all the instances where, my occupation and or my hobbies decided to try to take my life. And it was whether or not I could survive that, right? And had I done the preparation, had I done the proper strategies to get to that point, or had I just, hoped that I would survive? And so, as we can see from the morning sweat that is still going on.
We talked about that a little bit this morning, because this is literally what's going on here. It's 5 o'clock here, it's 6 o'clock there. You're walking in after your daily run, which you have this awesome streak going on. You're are you 23 something? Where are you at on that?
32:26.
I knew there was a 2 and a 3 in there.
Yeah, that's it.
Man.
Yeah, I'm getting, I think it's March, I hit 9 years.
9 years of
So
running
that's
every day.
Yeah. Most of the time I don't pay any attention to the years. I just pay attention to big digits now. Mm-hmm. Like one friend said, last year she earned her comma, because she went from 900 to 1,000.
Yeah.
And so, now I'm on the quest to make even numbers. So the next big number for me is 4,000.
Yeah.
But in between, I'll hit 9 years and 10 years before I make 4,000. So that's kind of weird, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's funny, the story behind that. You guys can hear that a little bit more in previous episodes, so go back and check those out on the podcast. But it's inspiring a lot of people, so we appreciate you every morning.
You got it.
This book, I've read through it briefly, and I'm reading through it again because we're going to break this thing down. We're going to talk a little bit about each story, each essay, each chapter, whatever you want to call it. That you call them essays in there, and they're just kind of short little essays. The book's about 200 pages long. Quick, easy read. It's what I like about it is, like, you can just go through and you can just like get a little kick in every single day about this is what it was. And rereading the first chapter again, it was just kind of interesting in reading through like this crash, right? That's what it's about.
Yeah, I decided to start from the end because you got to kind of know where you want to go before you can get there. And so you need to begin every adventure looking at the end. Well, in this case, I was, on about a 1.5 mile final for a runway, and my engine stopped
Mm-hmm.
and it wouldn't restart. So now I have the, uh, unhappy occurrence of realizing I'm going to crash. And so the question is, where am I going to crash? Because I attempted to restart the plane twice. And at that point, I'm beyond restarts. I mean, people would say continue to restart. At this point, I have to start worrying about where the plane's going down at and have to start. As you all know from the Scully incident in the Hudson River, there comes a point in time where you decide the plane is unrecoverable and you just decide to, put it down. And
Yep.
so that was my problem. I had to decide where it was going down. And I don't really know what hole the golf course was on, but I had two fairways in front of me and a bunch of trees. And so basically I could see the end, which was the very end of the runway was my goal. Only problem was I had golfers, trees, a ditch, and a few things in front of me, and I didn't know if I could make it. And the question was, did I have enough training? Could I think fast enough? Where was my out? And if I went for the runway and I caught the ditch, I was going to somersault the plane and probably kill myself. So, that's the small choices you have to make, right? And you have to do it in milliseconds, right?
Yep.
And so the question was, had I been well trained, and that's the story I always want to preach to people, had I trained myself well enough to have earned the right to survive? And I know that sounds weird, but that's really what it boils down to. Had I earned the right to survive?
Did you put the
And
work
so,
in?
yeah, have I done the job, right? I mean,
Yeah.
because a lot of things can go wrong. There's no question. But, had I put enough in? And if I put enough in, then you're good,
Yep.
right? Then you've at least done everything you can do. And if you die with a smile on your face, so to speak, I guess. I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah. That's one of the things that we've talked about a lot is like just knowing that you did, do you want to go to bed tonight knowing that you didn't do everything you possibly could have done to be better today than you were yesterday? Because now you've given yourself that opportunity to be better, right? That's what it's done.
Yeah, and there's been other incidents where this time I was alone in the plane, but there was other incidents where I was not alone, when other people were, their lives hinged on my ability or my training or the absence of training. That's what really becomes difficult, is when you risk other people's lives. And that's what airline pilots do all the time, right?
Right.
It's not just about them. Okay. Matter of fact, they don't really care about themselves. When the problem starts happening, they worry about the 300 passengers they have on board.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. You brought up what is that? What did they call it? Miracle on the Hudson or something like that, with the Solon. I can't remember his last name. Anyway, I just watched that movie, but it was crazy how in the end he lands this plane, he saves all these people, no one dies, but they're back to the fact that did he do the right thing? And it's like, this is stupid, because they really proved in the end that he did the only thing possible. He had to make the decision. It wasn't something that a computer can make the decision for you, right? Like, you have to decide, what are we going to do? How are we going to survive?
Yeah, so the way engine out training works is, when you realize your plane is unrecoverable, you now look for open space, because what you don't want to do is kill people on the ground with your plane. So you imagine his choices. Okay. City, water. He didn't have any other choice. There was zero other choice. If he could not make it back to the runway, which he assumed he could not turn around the plane and it would create so much drag on his plane that it would force him down. He only really had one choice. He had one out. And in truth, I know that passengers will not be happy to hear this, but the first concern at that point is you don't take any more people with you. In other words, I don't take the 300 people on the plane and crash it into a building and take another 1,000 people. So the plane becomes sacrifice to not taking out anything on the ground. So when you begin to realize what that is, so now you look at his options, that was his only option.
Yeah.
And so that's also why he probably didn't feel like much of a hero. Was he was like, I just did my job.
Right.
I did what I was trained to do over and over and over and over and over again. He just did it well.
Yeah, talk about one of the things that I was reading as I was thinking through this. I was like, the amount of things that are going on around you that you are like you see. You talked about it like slowing down, like time kind of slowed down when you realized you were in this. I don't know. It's not a panic. It's like you're just in this different zone where like we're going down. Now we have to decide what to do. How are we going to figure this out? And you just start noticing back and forth. And I have to tell you, it's kind of funny because it's like, you're like, here comes some oak trees. And I'm like, I wouldn't have noticed that they were oak trees. I would have just known that they were trees. I mean, this is crazy. Like the attention to detail, like what's going on, your mind slows down and you're just like, all right, we're going to figure this out. This is what we're going to do. Talk about that a little bit. How does that process go? That's crazy. That's just amazing that you can slow it down that much to see what to do.
Well, back to the most important thing, which is I had really, really good flight training. I had great instructors. So the reality is we did this over and over and over again, right? In all kinds of places, in odd places. It didn't matter. They found the luxury during flight training of pulling my engines or losing my flaps or losing something, but it was normally pulling my engine. And it was like, okay, engine out. Where are you going? Mm-hmm. Tell me where you're going. And let me tell you, when a lot of the places we trained, I was down to 100 feet before they gave me back my engine. So it was, we did a lot of that. So as we're looking, what I don't say in the book is that I actually saw the guy on the green look at me as I was going overhead, one of the golfers. He actually looks at me, right? Yeah. And as I made the joke, I wanted to lift my legs as we went over the tree, thinking, artificially that if I just lifted my legs, it wouldn't scrape the bottom of my plane, right? I mean, you get really trivial, but everything becomes very locked into the end of the runway and all the dynamics that are going on with your plane. In other words, where are my flaps? How am I configured? How do I get additional length out of this? What's in my glide path? All this stuff is going on as fast as you can. But the first thing that happens when you realize you're going down is you scan basically 180 to say, where can I put this down? Mm-hmm. And what you don't want to do is turn 180 around because you create so much drag, it forces you down fast. Yeah. So you don't want to do that. So you want to go somewhere where you kind of get maximum glide path. And so the golf course was one option. Okay. But there were golfers.
Right.
And that wouldn't have went really well. So the golfers eliminated the golf course. So then I had the trees and the ditch and everything. So really my only option was trying for the runway. Right. And so you're doing all that as fast as you can. You're reconfiguring your plane. You're making sure that everything is what it's supposed to be. And you're also making a call to the field to let them know you're engine out. And this is not a drill. This is not a joke. Okay. Because we can simulate, and you'll hear it over what's called a Unicom. You'll hear Cirrus 414 Tango X-ray is simulated engine out. Everybody knows what I'm doing. I'm doing a simulation. But if I call the actual Cirrus 414 declare an emergency, engine out, that clears the field. Right. That also lets the emergency workers know to go to work. And all this is taking place in 30 seconds. Everything from start to finish. And you just know because you've practiced so many times. It's repetition.
Yeah, it's amazing as you're talking about that. Like everything, you guys will hear this a lot because Robert and I both were athletes too, and we'll really relate these things to being an athlete. But you listen to like Michael Jordan talk about how he won games. He treated practice. He practiced harder than he played, is what he always said, because he knew that if he practiced harder than he played, then the game would take care of itself. The games are going to practice, not in the game. So it's amazing that I didn't really think about them practicing like engine stalls multiple times before you that's part of your training. That's where you learn. But had you not practiced that, you probably wouldn't have been as cool and calm about the whole situation.
Right. You're kind of The reason why you're calm is you're actually overwhelmed by your workload.
Mhm.
And so you're just working the problem. A friend of mine who I mentioned in there, I carried his casket because he kind of splattered his plane in North Carolina. I asked the NTSB their opinion of whether or not he knew how bad his situation was. And they said, when you get into those situations, you will be working the problem until you black out. Most
Yeah.
people don't know they're going to die because they're just busy working the problem. They're busy being good pilots. And my friend, when his plane was pulled apart by the forces, was nose to the runway on a 5-mile final. So he had worked the problem to that point
Right.
when he failed.
Yeah, it's literally that fight or flight because you're only trying to figure out a way to survive. That's all there is to it.
Yes.
And if you've practiced it, your eyes aren't going to be on I'm going to die. You're going to be
Yes.
We're going to make this happen. How are we going to make it happen?
And the more times you're kind of faced with extinction, you become better at coping with and working through your patterns, and you just work through them. And the biggest concern we always have is that people will freeze, but we're so busy working that you don't freeze. You're just
Right.
working the problem, working the problem, working the problem.
Yeah, that's just amazing. And so, the book's coming out here into the month, probably beginning of next month, but this is just the beginning. And it's funny because we talked about it last night. It's beginning, but we beginned in the end.
Yes, yes.
And it's just amazing. I started to look through it, and then we get into like the maxims, these maxims. Tell us about these maxims. There's 13 maxims for the Art of Victory. Tell us about that.
Well, there's kind of an intellectual scaffolding, if you will, of how you want to run your life and what everything should look and feel like and how you're going to process things through your brain. And so I kind of end up literally talking in verse, if that makes any sense, like concepts like life doesn't happen to me, it happens for me. But these things form my psychological underpinning, my philosophy of life. Therefore, we're always arguing about better. We're always moving forward. Injuries are part of the game. Challenges are part of the game. We were talking last night with a friend, and I said, the way people approach a victim mentality is like walking into the gym and blaming the weights for your pain, right? And I'm like, if you lift weights and you try to progress, you're going to hurt. That's part of, you lift to failure, right?
Right.
Well, that hurts. Well, I'm not going to walk in and blame the weights for the fact that I'm getting bigger and stronger. Well, why are you blaming life's challenges for making you better?
Right.
And yet people do. They sit there and go, well, oh my God, I had such a tough year. And I'm like, you're here. How tough is it? You survived. Somebody said you are your year is you survived the worst things that happened to you.
Yep.
So, that's not such a bad thing. And if you begin to see life as a set of lessons, then you look at it, and what you're trying not to do is repeat crap. That's
Right.
it. You just don't want to repeat it. I mean, I do enough stupid crap, like all of us. You just don't want to repeat it, right?
Yeah.
And so all the maxims try to do is underpin a philosophy of life that you can approach everything with. And it keeps you calm. It keeps you cool. It keeps you with the perspective of, even when it's bad, you're healing and growing. Okay. Because like a young lady asked me, she started running streak, and she said, how do you work through injuries? I said, you just run through them. But I said, you make sure that you're not doing more damage to yourself, so your tempo will slow, all that kind of stuff. But to be honest with you, it's not really luck. It's just preparation. You're trying to take care of your body. You're trying to put the best things in. You're trying to stretch, all these kind of things. But, repetitive stress, oh my God, after almost 9 years, the repetitive stress, silly. So I work through at least one injury a year. And you survive.
Yep.
You just work through it.
You figure out a way to make it work. You extra ice, extra Tylenol, stretch more, cool down more, slow it down, speed it up, whatever you got to do.
Right. And when you get a philosophy, and that's what the maxims were designed to do, is create a philosophy of life where you begin to look at, I have a tool in my tool belt for any problem. Like, I want to talk, I want to decide how I go from here where we are right now. And this podcast is a wonderful example of what I kind of preach in the book, is we're going to do a lot of failures, and everybody gets to watch me get better at these podcasts, because my first one, and this is like my second, so I'm really going to suck for a while, but that's okay, because the sucking part, as I learned, like, I'll get a backdrop, I'll get baffling in for noise, I'll get better at, finding something to do with my hands, which are moving out of,
Right.
out of people's space, and I'll look better, more at the camera. I mean, I'm unseasoned, so it's going to be ugly, but that's how it is. It's not pretty.
Funny.
Plus,
last night when I was
being on camera.
texting you, it was hilarious because I was sitting there going, I said this in the text. I was like, you know what? It doesn't matter. We'll try it. If it's shitty tomorrow, it'll be better the next day. We'll just do it again. We'll just do it again.
Yes. Yeah. And back to the sports analogy, right? You run a play and it just looks like hell, right?
Yep.
And you're like, the timing's all wrong and all that kind of stuff. So you do it again. And you do it again, and you do it again, and you do it again. And then there's this magic on game day, right?
Right.
This magic where you're running. And I remember this play. It was just one. It was 1st and 10 on the 20, right? And it's basically an option right. Yeah. And I have a fullback and a tailback in the I formation. So I fake to the fullback, and then I option to the right with the halfback. Well, my outside receiver is supposed to take the inside linebacker and shield him, and the tight end, it's a strong side play. The tight end pops out and hits the corner. Well, all we have left is the safety, right?
Yep.
And if the safety cheated in, okay, and he doesn't come in, I'm going to go run with the ball. If the safety comes up and takes me, I pitch it to the halfback, and off we go.
Yep.
Well, in this play, we'd ran it over and over again. Come on, it was ugly a lot.
Yep.
But this one time in this game, everything, it was like magic, right? Just like magic. The safety got caught inside. I didn't pitch it, and I went 80 yards for a touchdown. Yep. And it was just like magic, because everything worked to script. Now, we'll run the play 100 other times, and it will not do that. It will 4 yards, 3 yards.
Right.
And a lot of times I get hit and knocked into the ground, and so but it's that one magical time where it works to perfection.
Right.
And that's why you practice.
Yep.
So one day we'll get a podcast.
I just visualize as you're talking about that, because everyone knows that, I played football too, but I was the guy pushing people around so that you could get to where you needed to get, because I was a lineman.
Exactly.
But I still remember like watching people run the option, and just that perfect, like, just like you said, it's either I'm going in or I'm pitching that ball, and just, when it works, it works. It's a beautiful thing.
Oh, yeah. When it works, you overwhelm the defense. That's what it's designed to do. But if you don't get your blocks down, whatever.
Yep.
I mean, you're asking a wide receiver to shield a linebacker.
Yep.
I mean, that's a huge mismatch, right?
Not good. I don't know about you, but most of the receivers I had on my team did not want to block anyone. That's why they were a receiver.
Exactly. And they damn sure didn't want to take a linebacker on that's got 60 pounds on them.
Yep.
So the best you could pray for is they would get in their way.
Yep. Exactly.
They weren't blocking, just get in the way.
Get in the way just enough.
Just enough so I get free.
Yeah. Well, I think what we'll do here is I kind of like these maxims, and I think that it's a great one to cover. Maybe we'll cover one every day is what I'm thinking. There's 13 of them, but we'll get through every time we do this, because if you guys are joining us, this is something that Robert and I are going to do every Wednesday. He's got a book coming out. We're going to break it down a little bit. Brian Sales is in the house. He's asking questions. He says, it's funny that you hate to be on camera because you're always on camera. But the funny thing about it is that you're always on camera for a few minutes, right? You don't have to sit there.
7 to 11 seconds.
Yep, he's got it broke down.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I'm on there so short that it's like a burst of energy, and I'm always trying to get my energy and tempo on. and then I'm off. Nobody has to worry about anything other than, can I spit the words out in the right order?
Yep.
You know?
And there's even times, you guys don't know this because I get tagged in every one of them, but I know that like there's times where I'm sitting there and I get tagged in one and then I get tagged in another, like right after the first one. So that means that he saw something after he posted. He's like, I'm taking this one down. I'm putting another one up.
Yep. For 7 to 11 seconds.
Yes, exactly.
Right. So I'm being, I think one day I did 11 versions, right? Because I looked in the back and there was something in the background. There was this. The sweat was too profuse. Like finally I've stopped sweating. But the sweat was too profuse where there was literally dropping off the front of my nose, right? I'm like, and so I'm sitting there with a towel trying to wipe myself down. So yeah, there's a lot of dynamics. And like I said, I don't like being on camera.
Yeah, I think it's funny because I have, where's it at? Over there. I have my grandfather's chair sitting in the background, and just, I know you're not as old as my grandfather was, but you just remind me of that presence that you just walk into a room and Nikki says you look great on camera. I think that we're all worried about the way that we look, but it's just that, square shoulders, square jawline, just, you got that persona that you can just, people want to listen, I'm sure, when you walk in the room. So I think you just gotta, it comes with territory, right? Over time, you're not even gonna care anymore. And you do a great job.
And this is just, my son talked me into this TikTok thing about 2.5 years ago. Well, yeah, it's something like that. And I got on there and I was awful, just blithering awful. Right. But I just gutted through and I said, eventually I'll get better at this. And he goes, Dad, you're not too terrible, but here's what you need to change. Right. Yep. So I'm being coached, and he did a really good job.
Yep. Well, so we'll talk about this last one here real quick. The first maxim, we'll talk about it real quick because I think that this is very important. I think a lot of times I've talked about who wrote that book. Now I'm trying to remember the book, but beginning with the end in mind, right?
Right.
And I read a book from Arnold Schwarzenegger. I read a book. Who's it? Napoleon Hill, who talks about that, the 7 habits or 6 of highly successful people. He talks about beginning with the end in mind, where I like the idea of someone talking about a camera. Like, you're going to do something, right? Like this book. Okay, you're going to write this book. You probably wrote down a bunch of stuff. If you think this way and with the end in mind, you thought about everything that you want in the book. So you zoomed out, big picture. Like, what's it going to look like? Where are we going to be at? And started writing those things down or thinking them in your head or whatever. And then you went back to the little steps that you had to do in between to get there, right? So you zoom back in and start from there.
Yeah, because you just basically look at the end and you say, where do I want to be? And in my case, I wanted to be at the end of the runway. What little things did I need to do to get enough lift out of my plane to get me to the end of the runway? What more could I do, right? What else could I do? What did I know? What was in my tool belt that I could do? I broke this down to the simplest thing, how to get from the beginning to the end. And I said, you need strategy, you need a plan.
Right.
There's often times where you lack the ability to actually execute the plan. So you got to acquire the abilities, the knowledge, skills, or excellence to be able to get there. And then you have to fearlessly execute whatever plan you have. As bad as it may sound, or as uncomfortable as you may feel about getting on a podcast and just saying, I'm just going to gut it out. If it's crap, it's crap. Right. And you just say, well, what's your strategy? Well, my strategy is I've got things in front of me that I can lean on as we get through this. And thank God I've got a seasoned co-host who can kind of keep it moving where I'm not stuck thinking. Right.
Yeah.
And that's all you're trying to do is you're just trying to say, what do I think's missing? And then you're dynamically adjusting to everything that comes in your life because you can't plan for everything.
Yep.
And, in the case of this crash, because it ends up being a crash that I can actually reuse the plane, which is the best kind of crash. But in this case, I actually got a little assist from wind. I got a little brush down the runway, which gave me an extra little bit of lift to clear the ditch and survive. But it wasn't, the wind could have shifted and done the other thing too.
Yep.
So, some of it is at the end, it's luck.
Yeah, and you have to be able to use all those tools that you learned in order to make it happen. So,
Well, one of the most things in part about this maxim is remember the word compelling. The end that you want has to be compelling enough juice in it to pull you forward. In my case, it's living, surviving was the juice. But it's like for us, if we want to lose weight or whatever we want to do, where's the juice?
yep,
What's going to get us up every single solitary day and do what we need to do? How are we going to be excellent? They talked about Michael Jordan. They've been running lots of clips on TikTok about him. But the fact was, as they just said, he was just a monster for showing up in practice. He was a monster for showing up in games. He just kept showing up. Some of that's what we have to do.
yep. Don't believe what Scottie Pippen says. Oh man, that guy. Well, we'll go through one of these every day. This is kind of what we want to do. I think it was a really good, I don't even think it was a trial run because last week we did an interview to talk about it, but it's a great book and I'm excited for everyone to see it. So what we're going to do is there is 40, how many chapters are there? I got to go back through there.
40.
Yeah, there's 40 chapters in this book. So we just talked about the first one and we're going to talk about the second one. Sometimes it may take a little bit longer. We may break it down into 2 episodes. We're going to do this every Wednesday. I do the morning coffee Monday, Tuesday, and then Thursday, Friday, but we're going to do this and we're trying to decide what we're going to call it because it's going to be something a little bit separate, but going through it. But it really, what I like about it is it goes along the lines of what Shaping Success is because that's what I do. I go through, we talk about certain things that help us to become better. I was talking about the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, which is by Stephen Covey, which I don't know why I had the brain fart, but I did. But he talks about one of the 7 habits is beginning with the end in mind. And it's just a great one, but it's all about figuring it out. And we want to help you kind of figure that out. Robert's been through a lot of really cool stuff. And, we all have been. And that's what we have to learn. And that's what we have to figure out is how we use those as lessons. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to break it down and we're going to help you figure it out.
Excellent.
Yep. Well, Robert, I look forward to next week. And we'll try and get some more interaction. If you guys can share this wherever you see it, we're going to work on getting this. It's on YouTube right now live, but I'm going to start SEOing it, getting it in different positions, and we'll get it broke down and get it out for you to check it out, clip it, all that stuff. I wanted to say thanks. We have a new Patreon last night. Anna Mellon joined Patreon. Nikki is a Patreon. If you guys want a shout out at the end of the show, come hang out. Join the Patreon. As little as $3 a month. You can help support the show. And until next week, I'm going to say until next week because that's when we'll see Robert again.
Absolutely.
I challenge you to find the shape of your success.